Hello, I'm Brian Fox. Thanks for watching another episode of I Hate Rock Music. And this one is one of the stranger records to come out in that period. Pretty obscure. Apparently, there was only 5 acetates made at the time. Finally got released in the last 10 years or so. Recorded in 1971. And even the history of the band and all the details about the band are pretty strange. So we have Vernon Pereira on guitars, vocals, Mike Reeves on guitar, bass, and Phil Brittle on drums. And there's a lot of connections between these guys and Robert Plant and John Bonham's old band, Band of Joy. And so Bonham and Bonham and Plant remained fans of the band for quite a few years and would always show up at their gigs. And they have that kinship from Band of Joy, but and they also have kinship with early Judas Priest. And so these family trees of these bands are always fairly complicated because a lot of these guys know each other, but apparently in earlier bands, they were involved with people that eventually ended up in Judas Priest as well. So the band is called Possessed, and they have this one album, Exploration. And one of the things that's so creepy and tragic about the band is that in 1976, 3 members died in a van crash, and so that quickly ended the Possessed, and it adds kind of an eeriness of the fact that they called the band Possessed as well. And they toured a lot, so they were a known band in the UK. And when the car crash happened, it was in all the splash and big headlines all over Melody Maker and the like, New Musical Express. So they had a pretty high profile at one point. It's kind of amazing that in this day and age, they still kind of languish in obscurity, but a lot of old UK fans certainly remember them, and they played a lot of shows with bands like Trapeze and Thin Lizzy, who were friends of theirs, and also Necromandus, another really obscure band that almost came out on Vertigo. And so there's once again there's a lot of kinship between these bands, the Necromandus, the Possessed, and Black Sabbath, and the like. So and there's various incarnations of the band between 71 and 76. So members were going in and out of the band, but as far as the album's concerned, it's just the trio. And another interesting fact is that Vernon was also in a group called Shy Limbs, and there's 2 great 45s on Polydor. Vernon replaced Greg Late in the band and played bass at the time, but those 2 Shy Limbs 45s are really pretty good. And one of the other things that's really strange about the band is, and you'll hear it when you listen to their album, Vernon actually joined 2 Gibson SG parts, one part regular SG guitar, one part SG bass. And that's one of the reasons why they have such a peculiar sound on a lot of their tunes. And then he also handcrafted his own octave divider and used that with the band. So there's some really interesting guitar parts on this record that are really unlike anything I ever heard before. Another interesting story about the band as well is that in their later period, 1976, they got a lot more aggressive and were embraced by the punk community. And there was even talk of them going on tour with the Sex Pistols in the U.S., and that may or may not have happened, except for the horrible car wreck that they got in. But I put the link below to the record. It's well worth checking out. Some parts it's a little sloppy, some parts it's a little stripped down, some parts it's a little turgid, but the stuff on it that's good is so good and so unlike anybody you've ever heard before that it's well worth checking out. And Vernon also has some great vocal parts, but in some of the record, once again, he's not quite up to snuff. But for a record from 71, a lot of times we can let that go. But the Possessed, Exploration, link below. Check it out. I know it's taken a lot of abuse. A lot of people that rediscovered the record see all its weaknesses. But when I listen to it, I hear all its strengths in spite of its weaknesses. and especially the fact that there's parts on there that are unlike anything I've ever heard. And I'm really glad that this record got released after all these years. Well worth checking out. Not one of the top line records, but just because it's so unusual and so peculiar and has so many parts on it that are so different than anything else I've ever heard. I highly recommend it, but you can check out the link and decide for yourself. But at least you got to check it out, and a lot of you will very much respond to it. Others will probably see the weaknesses, and I understand that. But I have to say they're one of the more interesting bands of '71 in a year where there was quite a plethora of very interesting bands, and they still managed to stand out. So thanks for watching. I'm Brian Fox. This is I Hate Rock Music.